Some moments arrive without warning. A wrong number, a misplaced digit, a message sent into the dark that lands somewhere it was never supposed to go. And yet, looking back, those moments feel less like accidents and more like destiny wearing a disguise. This is a story about a woman who thought she was texting her landlord, and a man who had not smiled in 3 years until he read her message. What happened next would cost them both everything, and save them in ways neither could have imagined. Welcome. I hope this story finds you exactly when you need it. Please like, share, and subscribe. The night Ariana Greco sent the wrong text. She was sitting cross-legged on her bathroom floor with a bag of frozen peas pressed against her left knee, her phone in one hand and a crumpled late-notice letter in the other. The apartment smelled like old radiator heat and cheap lavender candles, and outside her single window, Rome hummed with the indifferent noise of a city that had never once asked if she was okay. She typed quickly, the way exhausted people do, without checking, without thinking, and hit send before she realized the contact name at the top of the screen was not her landlord's. It read, R. Santini. She stared at it for exactly 3 seconds before the floor seemed to tilt beneath her. The message she had just sent to a stranger read, Senior Messina, please. I know I'm 2 weeks late. My shifts were cut, and my knee is getting worse. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for 2 more weeks. I'll have it all, I promise. Ariana. She scrambled to delete it. The app showed 1 gray checkmark. Then 2. Then both turned blue. He had read it. Ariana pressed her head back against the cold tile wall and closed her eyes. Of all the things she needed tonight, adding humiliating herself in front of a stranger to the list had not been on her agenda. She typed fast, I'm so sorry. Wrong number. Please disregard. She waited. Nothing. Not even the bouncing ellipsis that would suggest someone was typing back. She exhaled slowly, dropped the phone face down on the tile, and told herself it was over. A stranger had read her desperation and chosen, mercifully, to say nothing. She could live with that. She could not have known, in that moment, that the man on the other end of that conversation was sitting in a high-backed leather chair on the 14th floor of a building she had walked past 100 times, with 3 phones on his desk and 17 decisions waiting for his signature, and that he had set all of it aside to read her message twice. Raphael Santini was not a man who felt things easily. He had trained himself out of it, the way you train yourself out of flinching, slowly, repeatedly, until the nerve stops responding. He had inherited his father's empire at 26, had buried 2 of his closest friends by 30, and had learned early that warmth was a liability in the world he moved through. He was respected in boardrooms and feared in places that never appeared on any map. He was 34 years old, unreachable by almost any definition of the word, and he had not laughed, genuinely, without calculation, in longer than he cared to count. But her message. 2 weeks late. Shifts cut. A knee that was getting worse. I'm not asking for charity. He read it a 3rd time. There was something in the language, not the words themselves but the architecture of them, the way she had preempted his refusal, the way she had promised something she was clearly terrified she couldn't deliver, the dignity she was trying to maintain while writing from what was obviously a bathroom floor in the middle of the night. He knew the texture of desperation. He had seen it up close from both sides, but he had rarely seen it packaged with so much quiet pride. He set the phone down, picked it up again. His assistant, Marco, knocked once and entered with a folder. Raphael held up 1 finger without looking away from the screen, and Marco, who had worked for him for 6 years and understood that a raised finger from Raphael Santini meant stop breathing if you have to, stopped where he was and waited. Raphael typed, wrong numbers don't usually apologize so formally. How long have you been dealing with this landlord? He sent it before he could think about why he was sending it. Marco watched his employer's thumb move across the phone screen with the particular expression of a man trying very hard not to have an expression. Ariana's phone buzzed against the bathroom tile. She picked it up expecting an automated response, or nothing. What she got was a question, and the question was so unexpected, so weirdly human, that she actually read it 3 times. She typed back, 7 months. He raises the rent every other month and calls it maintenance fees. I really am sorry for bothering you. You're not bothering me. 3 words. Simple. And yet something about the directness of them made her still. She typed, you don't have to be nice. I know it's late and I interrupted. whatever you're doing. Asterisk. Asterisk. I'm deciding whether to acquire a shipping company. Your interruption is preferable. Asterisk. Ariana laughed. It startled her, the laugh, because it was real and it came fast and she hadn't expected to make that sound tonight. She typed, asterisk, that's a very specific thing to be doing at 11:30 on a Tuesday. Asterisk. Asterisk, most things worth doing happen at inconvenient hours. Asterisk. She looked at that message for a moment. Then she typed, asterisk Ariana. Since apparently we're talking. Asterisk. A pause. Long enough that she thought maybe he had gone back to his shipping company. Then, asterisk Raphael. Asterisk. Just the one name. No last name. No explanation. Something about that single word felt both ordinary and enormous, and Ariana couldn't explain why. She fell asleep that night on the bathroom floor with the frozen peas melted and her knee still aching, and she told herself it was nothing. A stranger on the internet. A wrong number that had accidentally become a strange 10-minute conversation. It didn't mean anything. People talked to strangers all the time. She woke up at 6 with a crick in her neck and her phone showing a notification. It was from the same unknown number. Asterisk, get some sleep, Ariana. Asterisk. Sent at 2:14 a.m. She sat there in the gray morning light, phone in hand, and something shifted in her chest. Something she didn't have a name for yet and wasn't sure she wanted to name. She did not text back. She told herself that was the smart decision. She was not prepared for what happened 3 days later. The notice from her landlord came on a Thursday. Not an extension, not a negotiation, but a formal eviction notice slipped under her door with the particular cruelty of someone who enjoyed the act. Ariana read it standing in the hallway in her work uniform, bag over one shoulder, already running 4 minutes late for a shift that she couldn't afford to miss. Her knee throbbed. The letter shook slightly in her hand, not because she was weak, but because she was very, very tired. She went to work. She smiled at tables. She carried plates that were too heavy on a leg that was too damaged, and she did not let a single customer see any of it, because that was the thing about Ariana Greco. She had learned from watching her mother that survival required performance, and she had become very, very good at the performance. She got home at 11. There was an envelope under her door. Not from her landlord this time. Different paper. Heavier. Her name written across the front in precise, careful handwriting that she somehow immediately recognized as belonging to someone who never rushed anything. Inside was a single card. No letterhead. No return address. 3 lines. Asterisk, your rent has been settled for the next 6 months. The maintenance fee clause has been legally contested and removed from your lease. Consider the wrong number forgiven. Asterisk. No signature. Ariana sat down on her kitchen floor. The floor seemed to be her default lately, and read it 4 more times. Then she picked up her phone and typed to the unknown number. Asterisk, what did you do? Asterisk. His reply came in under a minute. Asterisk, nothing that required your permission. Asterisk. Asterisk Raphael. You can't just, you don't know me. We talked for 10 minutes. Asterisk. Asterisk 12 minutes. And I know you well enough. Asterisk. Asterisk, that is not how this works. Asterisk. Asterisk, you have an opinion about how things work. I have the resources to make them work differently. These are not incompatible. Asterisk. She stared at the screen. She typed and deleted 6 different responses. Finally, asterisk, I'm not a charity case. Asterisk. Asterisk, I know. You said so yourself. This isn't charity. Consider it an investment in the principle that landlords who exploit maintenance clauses should face consequences. Asterisk. A pause. Then asterisk also. How is your knee? Asterisk. Ariana's throat tightened in a way she absolutely refused to acknowledge. She typed, asterisk, it's fine. Asterisk. Asterisk, you're lying. Asterisk. Asterisk, you can't possibly know that. Asterisk. Asterisk, you said it was getting worse 3 days ago. You've had a full work week since then. It's not fine. Asterisk. She didn't respond immediately, because she didn't know what to do with someone who paid that kind of attention. In her experience, people heard what they needed to hear and moved on. They didn't catalog details. They didn't follow up. They especially didn't settle 6 months of rent and then ask about your knee in the same conversation. It's manageable, she finally typed. Asterisk, thank you. For the other thing. I'll pay you back. Asterisk. Asterisk, you won't. Asterisk. Raphael. Asterisk Ariana. Go to sleep. Asterisk. She went to sleep. She lay in the dark for a long time first, staring at the ceiling, feeling something she did not have armor for, something soft and dangerous and entirely inconvenient. And she made herself a promise. She would find out who he was, and she would understand what this was, before she let herself feel another single thing about it. The problem was that finding out who Raphael Santini was took approximately 45 seconds of searching. She did it the next morning over coffee, typing his first name and the word Rome and shipping into her browser, and the results that came back made her set down her mug very slowly. Raphael Santini, 42 years old, though he looked younger in every photo she found. CEO of Santini Group, a conglomerate that touched shipping, real estate, private finance, and 3 other industries she'd never heard of. Worth more than some small nations. Born in Naples, educated in London, currently based in Rome. Photographed at galas and summits and charity events, always in dark suits, always with the same expression. Not unfriendly, not cold, just utterly contained. As if he had decided long ago exactly how much of himself the world was permitted to see and had not wavered from that decision since. She read 3 articles. Halfway through the 4th, she found a phrase that made her stop. The Santini name, long associated with the family's controversial origins in Naples. She clicked through. The language was careful, journalistic. But she had grown up in Rome, and she had grown up around people who spoke in careful language about certain families, and she understood what the careful language meant without needing it spelled out. She closed her laptop. She sat with that for a long time. Then she opened it again and typed a text. Asterisk, I looked you up. Asterisk. His reply came after a longer pause than usual. Asterisk and. Asterisk. Asterisk, I have questions. Asterisk. Asterisk, I expect you do. Asterisk. Asterisk, are you going to answer them? Asterisk. Asterisk, some of them. In person would be better. Asterisk. Ariana read that twice. Asterisk, I haven't agreed to meet you. Asterisk. Asterisk, not yet. Asterisk. The audacity of that, the calm, unbothered certainty, made her breath catch in a way she told herself was irritation. Asterisk, you're very sure of yourself. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'm sure of very few things. You're becoming one of them. Asterisk. She put the phone face down on the table. She walked to the window. She looked out at the street she had lived on for 2 years. The street that had felt like a temporary situation that somehow kept becoming permanent, and she thought about a man who settled rent disputes and asked about her knee and wrote in careful handwriting and texted at 2 a.m. just to tell her to sleep. She picked up the phone. Asterisk coffee. Public place. Daytime only. Asterisk. Asterisk Saturday. Cafe Romano on Via Condati. 10 o'clock. Asterisk. I'll think about it, she typed. She was there at 9:58. The cafe was exactly the kind of place she would never have chosen for herself. Marble countertops, coffees that cost as much as her lunch, the quiet hum of classical music underneath the sound of expensive shoes on stone floors. She chose a table by the window, ordered a cappuccino she calculated she could afford if she didn't eat dinner, and told herself to stop smoothing her jacket. He walked in at exactly 10. She recognized him immediately, and not just from the photos. There was something about the way he moved, unhurried, deliberate, as if the space around him rearranged itself slightly to accommodate him, that identified him before she'd fully processed his face. He was taller than the photos suggested. Darker-haired. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, and his eyes found her the moment he cleared the doorway. He crossed the room without looking at anyone else. He sat down across from her, and for a moment neither of them said anything. "You're younger than your photos," he said finally. His voice was low, unhurried, with the trace of an accent she couldn't quite place. "You're taller," she said. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but the suggestion of one. The ghost of what a smile would look like on a face that had mostly stopped practicing. "Ariana." "Raphael." The waiter appeared. Raphael ordered an espresso without looking at the menu, and Ariana noticed the waiter's posture change. The particular combination of deference and alertness that she had seen in people around powerful men. It told her something about how he was recognized in rooms, even rooms he had never been in before. "You have questions," he said when the waiter left. "I have a lot of them." "Ask." She looked at him directly, because she had decided on the walk over that she would not be nervous, or if she was nervous, she would not let it show. The things the articles imply about your family, about where the money comes from. Are they true? He didn't flinch, didn't deflect. He looked at her the way someone looks at a question they have been asked many times and have decided, in this particular instance, to answer honestly. My grandfather built the foundation of this family in ways I would not have chosen. My father expanded it. I have spent the last 8 years making it into something different. Whether that's enough depends on who's asking. I'm asking. Then the answer is, the business I run is legitimate. What it came from is not something I can undo. I don't pretend otherwise. Ariana studied him. That's a very precise answer. I don't deal in imprecise things. And paying a stranger's rent? Is that precise? He picked up his espresso. You weren't a stranger by then. We'd texted for 12 minutes. 13, he said. And in 13 minutes, you told me more about your actual life than most people tell me in years of acquaintance. You weren't performing. You thought I was someone else, and you were too exhausted to edit yourself. He set the cup down. I found that remarkable. Ariana sat very still. That's a strange thing to find remarkable. I find authenticity remarkable. It's uncommon in my world. She believed him. That was the thing. She believed him, and she couldn't decide if that was good judgment or catastrophic naivety. The rent, she said. I need you to understand that I'm going to pay you back. You're going to keep saying that. Because I mean it. I know you do. That's another thing I find remarkable. He looked at her for a long moment. You don't need to pay me back, Ariana. But if it matters to you, then we can argue about it when you're ready. You're very calm about everything. I've had a lot of practice. The cafe filled around them. People came and went, ordered and argued, laughed at private jokes. Ariana and Raphael sat in their corner by the window and talked for 2 hours, and at some point she stopped calculating the price of her cappuccino and forgot to monitor her expression and simply talked. About her mother, about the restaurant job, about the knee injury that had started as a small thing and become a bigger one, about what she had wanted to study before money made the question irrelevant. He listened. That was the other thing. He didn't wait for his turn to speak. He listened with a quality of attention that felt almost uncomfortable, thorough, serious, like being read by someone who was very good at reading. What about you? She asked. What did you want before all of this? He was quiet for a moment. To sail, he said finally. Competitively. I was good enough. But my father was sick by the time I was 22, and the family needed managing, and some choices make themselves. Do you regret it? Every winter, he said simply. And then, before she could respond, I have a boat. I take it out when the work allows. It's not the same, but it's something. She looked at him, this enormous, contained, carefully constructed man who had paid her rent and asked about her knee and apparently once wanted to sail. And she felt the shift again, that unnamed thing, and this time it was harder to dismiss. I should go, she said. I have a shift. He stood when she stood, which she hadn't expected. He was very close suddenly, and she was very aware of it. Your knee, he said. See a doctor, Ariana. A real one. I can't afford. I know what you're going to say. Then you know I'm going to say no. I know you're going to try. He held her gaze. Think about it. She walked out of the cafe into the Roman afternoon, and she told herself 3 things. That she barely knew him, that his world was dangerous, and that she was absolutely not going to let this become something. She had never been very good at keeping promises to herself. The doctor's appointment was on a Tuesday, 2 weeks after the cafe. She hadn't agreed to let him pay for it. She had simply made the appointment herself, intending to manage it, and then discovered that when she arrived at the clinic, her name was already in the system and the balance was already settled, and the receptionist gave her the look of someone who had been instructed not to answer certain questions. Ariana sat in the waiting room with her jaw tight, and her phone already unlocked. Asterisk Raphael. Asterisk. Asterisk, good morning. Asterisk. Asterisk, you did it again. Asterisk. Asterisk, you needed an MRI. The clinic you called doesn't have the equipment. I transferred you to one that does. Asterisk. Asterisk, you transferred me. Without asking. Asterisk. Asterisk, I was going to tell you. Asterisk. Asterisk, when? After I'd already had the MRI. Asterisk. A pause. Asterisk, possibly. Asterisk. She looked at the ceiling. Asterisk, you can't keep doing this. Asterisk. Asterisk, which part? Asterisk. Asterisk, any of it. All of it. Raphael, I need you to understand that I'm not. Asterisk, she stopped. Started again. Asterisk, I don't want to be someone's project. Asterisk. His response took longer this time. When it came, it was just 4 words. Asterisk, you are not that. Asterisk. Asterisk, then what am I? Asterisk. She waited. The waiting room filled and emptied. Someone called her name for the preliminary intake. She was almost in the door when her phone buzzed one more time. Asterisk, you're someone I think about constantly. I'm still working out what to do about that. Asterisk. Ariana stood in the doorway of the consultation room, phone in hand, and the nurse said her name again, and she said yes, sorry, coming. And she put the phone in her pocket and spent the next 40 minutes trying to remember how lungs worked. The MRI showed a torn meniscus. Moderate. Manageable with physical therapy and rest. More complicated if left untreated. The doctor was kind, gave her a referral, told her she'd caught it before it required surgery. She sat in the consultation room afterward with the paperwork in her hands and thought about the fact that she hadn't caught it at all. That if it weren't for an accidental text and a man who paid attention to things she barely said, she would still be pressing melted frozen peas against it on her bathroom floor and calling it manageable. She texted him when she got outside. Asterisk, torn meniscus. They caught it early. No surgery needed. Asterisk. His reply was immediate. Asterisk, good. Asterisk. Then, asterisk, I want to see you again. Asterisk. She looked at those words for a long moment, standing on the pavement in the afternoon light, people moving around her. Raphael. Asterisk, Saturday. The boat. It doesn't have to be anything. Just come. Asterisk. She should have said no. She knew she should have said no. She had a list of very good reasons why, and she had recited them to herself multiple times, and she was aware that every single thing about this man represented a complication she could not afford. She typed, asterisk, what time? Asterisk. The marina at Ostia on a Saturday morning was a different world. Salt air and the creak of hull against dock, the city left behind somewhere on the other side of the water. Raphael was already there when she arrived, standing on the deck of a boat that was beautiful in the understated way of things that don't need to announce themselves. He wore no suit. Dark trousers, a gray linen shirt rolled to the elbows, and he looked different here. The same contained quality, but something underneath it that was closer to the surface. He helped her on board with a hand that held hers exactly long enough, and she told herself the warmth of it meant nothing. They went out past the breakwater into open water, and he sailed it himself. No crew, no assistant, just him and the rigging and the wind, and she sat at the stern and watched him work and understood, without being told, that this was the closest thing to privacy he allowed himself. You're good, she said. I told you I was. You said you were good enough. That's different. He glanced at her over his shoulder, and this time the smile was real. Small, brief, but entirely real. And it changed his face in a way that made her breath catch. They ate lunch on the water. He had packed it himself, she realized, olives and bread and good cheese and small tomatoes that tasted the way tomatoes were supposed to taste. They sat across from each other in the afternoon light and talked, and somewhere between the bread and the olives, the distance between them shrank in a way that had nothing to do with physical proximity. Tell me something you've never told anyone, she said. She didn't know why she asked it. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I've been lonely for a very long time. I didn't let myself name it until recently. She looked at him. What made you name it? A wrong number, he said. Sent at 11:30 on a Tuesday. The water moved under them. Ariana looked out at the horizon and felt the unnamed thing settle in her chest like something finding its place. And she thought that this was probably the moment she should be most afraid. Because this was real. This wasn't a text message or a kind gesture she could rationalize. This was a man sitting across from her in the afternoon light, telling her the truth, and she was running out of reasons not to let it matter. He drove her home. Parked outside her building. Neither of them got out immediately. Raphael, she started. I know, he said quietly. Your list of reasons. It's a good list. I know it is. He looked straight ahead at the street. I'm not going to push, Ariana. But I need you to know something. He turned to look at her then, and the full weight of his attention was something she felt physically. I haven't wanted anything for myself in a very long time. This is the first time in years that something has felt worth wanting. The city moved around them. Somewhere above, a window opened and music spilled out. Something old and Italian that drifted down over the car like a rumor of something. Ariana looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and kissed him on the cheek. the barest press of her lips against the angle of his jaw, and pulled back before either of them could make it into something more. "Good night, Raphael," she said. She got out of the car. She went upstairs. She pressed her back against her door in the dark of her hallway and stood there for a full minute with her eyes closed and her heart doing something she did not have the vocabulary for. Outside on the street, Raphael Santini sat in his car for a long time before he drove away. Over the next 3 weeks, they built something without naming it. Coffee twice, a museum visit where he stood in front of a painting of the sea for so long she asked him what he was thinking, and he said the water always knows where it's going, and she wrote it down later because she couldn't stop thinking about it. Phone calls at night that started with the news of their days and ended with long, comfortable silences that neither of them hurried to fill. He sent her things. Not extravagant things, not jewelry she would refuse or gifts she would feel obligated by. A book she'd mentioned once in passing. A small jar of the tomatoes from the boat, with a card that said only for the record, "These are better than Messina's rent." A physical therapy referral to someone who saw her on his recommendation and charged her a copay she could actually manage. She cooked for him once. Her apartment, her stove, a pasta that her mother had made every Sunday that she'd never made for anyone else. He ate it in her tiny kitchen at her tiny table with his jacket off and his sleeves rolled up. And he said, "This is the best thing I've eaten in years," and she believed him because he was not a man who said things he didn't mean. "You could have anyone," she said one evening on her couch, his shoulder close enough to lean against, which she was not doing. "You could have anyone, Raphael. Someone from your world." "The people from my world," he said carefully, "know exactly who I am, and they use that knowledge strategically. You didn't know who I was when you first told me the truth. That's not something I can replace. And now that you know I know, now I'm trying to prove that knowing doesn't have to change things." She was quiet. "Sometimes I think you've already decided what this is. Haven't you?" She didn't answer. Because the answer was yes, she had decided. Somewhere around the boat and the tomatoes and the way he'd said lonely like it was a word he was finally brave enough to use. She had decided. And the deciding terrified her, because she had learned from her mother that the things that felt like being saved often became the things that broke you, and she was not sure she could survive being broken by him. She didn't say any of that. She said, "I need more time." He nodded. "I know." He didn't push. He didn't argue. He simply stayed, showing up in the ways he had been showing up, consistent and quiet and present, and she understood that this was its own kind of statement. What she didn't know was that he was also managing, in those same weeks, the first signs of a problem she was not yet aware of. A rival family, the Valetes, old money and older grudges, had become aware of the shift in Raphael's routine. His men had noticed the surveillance first. A car outside her building, parked differently each time, but present on 5 of the last 7 days. Someone had been asking questions at the restaurant where she worked. Not dangerous questions, not yet, but the kind of ambient information gathering that preceded something. Raphael had addressed it quietly, efficiently, in ways that did not involve her knowing anything was wrong. He told himself it would resolve. That it was preliminary. That there was no reason to frighten her with a threat that wasn't yet direct. He was wrong on the 3rd count, and he would come to understand that too late. The shift happened on a Friday night. Ariana was at work, a long shift, the restaurant full, her knee aching at a 7 on a scale she had trained herself to report only in internal numbers. A man sat down at one of her tables. Late 30s, good-looking in the obvious way of men who have always been told they're good-looking. And he smiled at her with the easy confidence of someone who had never been told no. His name, he told her unprompted, was Luca. He came back the next 3 Fridays. He left good tips and better conversation. And he asked her to dinner on the 3rd visit in a way that was charming without being aggressive, and Ariana found herself saying she would think about it in a voice that was softer than she intended. She told Raphael about it on the phone that night. She wasn't sure why she told him. She simply found herself doing it, reporting the events of her day, and Luca was part of the day. She told it plainly as a piece of information. She was not prepared for what happened to the quality of Raphael's silence. He said very little. He was polite. He said something about how she should do what felt right to her. And she knew him well enough by now to hear everything underneath the words that was not being said, and she didn't know whether to be moved by his restraint or unnerved by what it was restraining. 2 days later, Marco appeared at the restaurant. Not in any obvious way. He sat at the bar, ordered dinner, tipped well, left without speaking to anyone. But Ariana had met Marco once, briefly, in the parking lot of the marina, when he'd brought Raphael something that needed signing. And she recognized him, and she understood what she was seeing. She texted Raphael that night. Asterisk, was that Marco at the restaurant? Asterisk. A pause. Asterisk, yes. Asterisk. Asterisk, were you checking on me? Asterisk. Asterisk, I was making sure you were safe. Asterisk. Asterisk, Raphael. We talked about this. Asterisk. Asterisk, we talked about gifts and medical bills. We haven't specifically talked about this. Asterisk. Asterisk, because I shouldn't have to. I'm not. I can't be someone who needs watching. I've been managing my own life for. Asterisk. Asterisk, I know you have. This wasn't about your capacity, Ariana. There's something I should have told you 2 weeks ago. Asterisk. She went cold. Asterisk, tell me now. Asterisk. What he typed next, the surveillance, the valetas, the questions at her workplace. She read once fast and once slow, and by the second reading she was standing in the middle of her kitchen with very specific memories arranging themselves into a pattern that made her feel sick. The man at the restaurant. Luca. Too convenient. Too consistent. 3 Fridays in a row. The man who's been coming to my table, she typed slowly. Asterisk, is he one of them? Asterisk. A very long pause. Asterisk, we're not sure yet. Asterisk. Asterisk, Raphael. Asterisk. Ariana. Asterisk, tell me. Asterisk. Asterisk, probably. Asterisk. She set the phone down on the counter. She stood in her kitchen for a long time. Then she picked it back up and typed. Asterisk, you let me sit across from him. You knew something might be wrong and you let me. Asterisk. Asterisk, I was handling it. I didn't want to scare you. Asterisk. Asterisk, that was not your choice to make. Asterisk. Asterisk, I know. I know that. I'm sorry. Asterisk. She had not heard him apologize before. It didn't fix anything. She was frightened, not the abstract, manageable fear of before, but a specific, embodied fear with a name and a face. A man named Luca who had smiled at her with easy confidence and left good tips, and who had been, all along, an instrument of something that wanted to get to Raphael through her. She was frightened, and underneath the fear was something else, something that felt, in ways she couldn't fully articulate, like the thing she had been afraid of from the very beginning. Not him, not his world, but this, being in his world without knowing it, being caught in the current of something enormous without a life jacket. I need some time, she typed. Asterisk, I need to think. Don't send Marco. Don't do anything. Just give me space. Asterisk. The pause before his reply was the longest yet. And then, asterisk, okay. Asterisk. Just that. Okay. She turned off the lights in her kitchen and stood in the dark for a very long time, and outside her window Rome kept moving. The way it always did. The way cities do when the people inside them are quietly falling apart, and she felt something in her chest that she could only describe as the particular ache of a door swinging shut on a room you hadn't realized you needed. She did not know, standing there in the dark, that 2 floors below, parked just outside the range of the building's security camera, a car had been sitting for 40 minutes. She did not know that Raphael's phone had already lit up with a message from Marco. She did not know that the thing she was afraid of was not, in fact, behind her. It was about to be in front of her. And the only person standing between her, and it was the man she had just asked to stay away. The car outside did not move for another hour. Ariana didn't know it was there. She had gone to bed with her phone face down on the nightstand, her mind cycling through the same loop. Raphael's omission, Luca's smile, the particular helplessness of discovering that danger had been sitting across from you at a table and you had not known, could not have known, because someone else had decided to manage the information on your behalf. She understood why he'd done it. That was the complicated part. She understood the impulse, the desire to shield, to handle, to stand between someone you cared about and a threat before it became real enough to frighten them. She had seen it in him from the beginning, that quality of quiet intervention, and she had let herself be moved by it because it had felt like care. It was care. She didn't doubt that. But care without honesty was still a kind of control, and Ariana had grown up watching her mother defer to a man who always knew best, always managed things, always had good reasons. And she had promised herself, somewhere in the long quiet aftermath of that she would never again live inside someone else's decisions about what she was ready to know. She fell asleep somewhere past midnight. She woke at 2 a.m. to the sound of her door buzzer. She lay still for a moment, certain she'd imagined it. Then it came again, 2 short bursts, deliberate. And she sat up in the dark with her heart already moving faster than the situation warranted. She reached for her phone. No messages. She went to the intercom by the door, finger over the button, and said, "Who is it?" Static. Then a voice she didn't recognize. "Delivery for Greco." Building manager said to bring it up. At 2 in the morning? Silence. She stepped back from the intercom. Her hands were steady, which surprised her. She picked up her phone and called the one number she had told herself she wasn't going to call, and he answered before the first ring had fully sounded, which told her he had not been asleep either. "There's someone at my door," she said. "I didn't buzz them in. They said delivery. Don't open it." His voice was entirely calm, the kind of calm that is not the absence of urgency, but its most controlled expression. "Move away from the door. Go to your bedroom. Lock it. Raphael. Ariana. Please." She went. She locked the bedroom door and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark and listened to the sound of the city and her own breathing and his voice on the phone saying, "I'm coming. Stay on the line. Don't hang up," in the same measured tone a person uses when they are simultaneously driving very fast and trying not to communicate how fast. "How close are you?" she asked. 7 minutes. "You weren't far." "A beat." "No." She understood then, he had been close. Not in the building, not in violation of what she'd asked, but close. Near enough. She did not know what to do with that, so she filed it away and concentrated on breathing. The sound from the hallway, if there had been one, had stopped. For minutes later, she heard voices outside the building. 2 minutes after that, Raphael's voice came through the phone. "It's clear. I'm coming up." She unlocked the bedroom door. She unlocked the apartment door. She was standing in the hallway when he came up the stairs. Not the elevator, the stairs, taking them at a pace that was almost running. And he stopped when he saw her, the way someone stops when they have been bracing for something, and the something turns out to be better than they feared. He was in a dark shirt, no jacket, and there was an energy around him she had not seen before. Not violent, not cold, but stripped of the usual careful management. He crossed the hallway in 4 steps, and before she could say anything or decide anything, his hands were on her face, and he was looking at her with an expression that she did not have a word for, something between relief and anguish, and everything he hadn't let himself say for weeks. Ariana. Just her name. Just that. She grabbed his wrists, not to pull his hands away, but to hold them there. "I'm fine. I know. I can see that." His voice was rough in a way she'd never heard. "I know you're fine. I just needed to." He stopped. Exhaled. "I needed to see it." They stood in the hallway for a moment, his hands on her face, her hands on his wrists, the space between them lit by the single low lamp from the living room, and she felt something inside her give way. Not break, but yield, the way something yields when it's been held rigid for too long and finally allows itself to move. "Come inside," she said. He came inside. He sat on her couch and she made coffee, because her hands needed something to do. And they sat across from each other in the 3 a.m. quiet of her apartment, and he told her everything. The valetas, the history, the surveillance that had started 6 weeks ago, the confirmation, received an hour before she'd texted him, that Luca was not a coincidence. He was a low-level operative running basic reconnaissance, learning her patterns, her schedule, who she spent time with. He was not himself dangerous. He was a data point in someone else's larger calculation. The larger calculation being, Raphael had something now that could be used against him. Her. She listened to all of it. She didn't interrupt. When he finished, she said, "This is what you were trying to protect me from." "Yes. And you thought not knowing was safer than knowing." "I thought it was kinder." "It wasn't. I know that now." He looked at his hands. "I've spent a long time making decisions for other people's protection and not asking what they needed. It's a difficult habit to break." He looked up at her. "I'm breaking it. I should have told you. I'm sorry." Ariana looked at this man. This enormous, complex, carefully constructed man who sailed when the work allowed and packed good cheese for boat lunches, and had been lonely for a very long time, and was now sitting on her second-hand couch at 3 in the morning apologizing with every part of his considerable dignity fully engaged. And she felt the last of her resistance dissolve in a way that was quiet and final and completely irreversible. "You can't make decisions for me," she said. "Even ones that feel protective. I need you to understand that." "I understand it. I need you to keep understanding it. Not just tonight." "Yes. I've watched someone I loved disappear inside another person's idea of what was best for her. I won't do that. Not even for, she stopped. Not even for what? He said quietly. She looked at him. Not even for this. Whatever this is. Then tell me what you need, he said. From me. Not what you think you should need, not the reasonable list. What do you actually need? She thought about it. Really thought about it, the way she rarely let herself. Honesty, she said finally. Even when it's frightening. Especially then. A pause. And I need you to stop treating me like something that might break. You're not breakable, he said. I've known that from the beginning. I was trying to protect something else. What? He was quiet for a moment. This. What we were building. I was afraid that if you saw the full scope of what my life involves, you'd leave before we got here. And now I know the full scope. Yes. And I'm still here. Something shifted in his face. Not dramatically, not theatrically, but in the way of tectonic things, deep and slow and permanent. Yes, he said. You are. The coffee went cold on the table. Outside, the city moved toward dawn in that gradual Roman way, light accumulating slowly at the edges of things. Ariana looked at the man across from her and thought, here is the moment. Here is the exact moment. You are standing at the edge of something, and you can step back or you can step forward, and there will not be a third option. She stood up. She crossed the room. She sat down next to him on the couch, close, her shoulder against his. And she felt his whole body still the way someone stills when they're afraid to move and break something delicate. She rested her head against his shoulder. His exhale was long and slow and sounded like something being put down. His arm came around her, careful, certain, and they sat like that while the dawn came in through the windows, and nothing was said, because nothing needed to be said, and it was the most honest Ariana had felt in years. She fell asleep there. He didn't move. When she woke, it was full morning, pale gold and quiet, and he was still beside her with his eyes closed, though she suspected he hadn't slept. The apartment looked different in daylight, smaller, warmer, more like a place where real things happened. She studied his face for a long moment. This man she had accidentally texted, and something settled in her so completely that she didn't fight it. She made breakfast. He woke to the smell of it and came to the kitchen doorway and stood there with rumpled hair and no armor, looking more like a person than she had ever seen him look, and she handed him coffee and didn't say anything, and he drank it and didn't say anything, and it was the easiest morning she could remember having. The danger didn't disappear with the sunrise. She understood that clearly. But something had been established in the night that made the danger feel different, not smaller but shared. A thing they were standing in front of together, rather than something she was being shepherded away from. He left mid-morning to handle things he didn't detail but told her he would explain later. And before he went he stopped at her door and turned back and looked at her with an expression that she had not seen him use before. Open, unguarded, something almost boyish in it despite the gray at his temples and the weight of everything he carried. "Ariana," he said. "I know," she said. He almost smiled. "You don't know what I was going to say. You were going to say something careful because you've been saving it." A pause. "Yes. Say it." He looked at her for a moment. "Later," he said. "When things are settled. When I can say it properly." She nodded. "Okay." He left. She stood in the quiet of her apartment, and the unnamed thing finally had a name. And the name was not subtle or complicated. It was the oldest name there was, the one people spent their whole lives rearranging themselves to deserve. The next 2 weeks moved on 2 tracks simultaneously. On one track, Raphael. Coffee and calls and evenings. More evenings, easier evenings where she cooked and he helped badly, and they ate at the small table and talked about everything. His sister in Naples who called every Sunday and worried too much. Her mother who called infrequently and never asked the right questions. The book she was reading, the shipping route he was considering, small things and large things in the same conversation. The way it is with people who have stopped performing for each other. He took her to the boat again. The late October sea was rougher than before, and she held the railing on the starboard side while he worked the sails, and at some point she stopped holding on and just stood there with the wind and her hair going everywhere and laughed. She laughed, purely, into the salt air. And he watched her from the helm with the expression of a man who has just understood the answer to a question he'd spent years asking. He kissed her for the first time on the boat. Not dramatically. There was no orchestration to it. They were below deck, out of the wind, and she was showing him something in the book she'd brought. And he was close, and she looked up, and he was looking at her, and it was the most natural thing in the world. It was quiet and certain. The way everything he did was quiet and certain, and she kissed him back without thinking, without calculating, without any of the usual running commentary in her head. Just her and him, and the motion of the water, and the feeling of something finally arriving. They came up for air eventually, both of them slightly undone, and he rested his forehead against hers for a moment and said nothing. And she said nothing, and the boat moved under them, and the sea went on in all directions. On the second track, the Valetes. Marco brought Raphael updates that Raphael now shared with Ariana. Not every operational detail, but the shape of it, the trajectory. The Valetes had escalated their interest. Luca had been replaced by someone more senior, which meant the reconnaissance phase was ending and something else was beginning. Raphael had initiated his own responses, legal, financial, and otherwise, but there was a meeting that needed to happen, a reckoning of the kind that certain disputes required, and it carried risk. How much risk? Ariana asked on a Tuesday evening in her kitchen. Managed, he said. Raphael. Meaningful, he said. But manageable. She looked at him across the table. I want you to be honest. I am being honest. The risk is real. I've dealt with real risks before, and I'm still here. I have people I trust, precautions in place, and I've been in rooms with the Valetes before. He paused. What I can tell you is that I'm not walking into anything careless. And I'm not doing this for, he stopped. For what? He looked at her steadily. For pride. Or money. Or position. I'm doing it to end it. Completely. So that the thing outside your building at 2 a.m. doesn't happen again. So that men with good smiles don't sit at your tables for reasons that have nothing to do with the food. He reached across the table and put his hand over hers. So that you're safe. Fully. Not managed safe. Actually safe. Ariana turned her hand over and held his. Come back, she said. That's all I'm asking. That, he said. I can promise. The meeting was on a Thursday. She didn't know the location. She didn't ask. She had decided, with great effort, to trust the boundary between what he could share and what he couldn't, because she had said she needed honesty and he had given it, and now she owed him the same trust in return. She worked her shift. She carried plates. She smiled at tables. She watched the door less than she might have, which she considered an achievement. She got home at 11 and found a small package outside her apartment door. Inside, the first edition of a novel she had mentioned once. One time, in passing, during a conversation that had moved on immediately afterward. How he had remembered, how he had found it, she didn't know. There was a card in his handwriting. Asterisk for when you need company that asks nothing of you. I'll be back before you finish chapter 3. Asterisk. She pressed the card against her chest and sat on the floor. The floor again, always the floor, and felt the specific texture of caring about someone so much it had edges. He texted at midnight. Asterisk done. On my way, asterisk. She was awake when he knocked. She opened the door and he was there, no visible damage, the controlled composure intact, but something underneath it that was looser, like a held breath released. He looked at her for a moment. You opened the book, he said, seeing it on the side table. Chapter 2, she said. Something in him settled visibly. He came inside. She made tea. They sat on the couch, her feet tucked up, his arm along the back behind her, and he told her what he could. The meeting, the terms, the agreement that the Valetes had ultimately found it in their considerable self-interest to accept. An agreement with teeth, legal and financial arrangements that made further interference expensive enough to